So welcome back to Track Talk. We're going to be doing a live playthrough of 1830. I actually messed up in the auction and we all tried to undo and redo and it ended up basically killing the game. So this is actually our second attempt at this playthrough and we will see how this works out. Feline Wrangler is up and he will be bidding on the CNA. We now have a contested auction for the CNA. Miriam and Feline Wrangler are both on the most expensive good private. King Zombie has joined on the Delaware and Hudson, and I will be going on the M&H. The D&H is now also contested. Feline Wrangler on the D&H and the CNA may make it challenging for him if he were to win the D&H to win the CNA. D&H is generally secure from the B&O if he were to win it. I think there is potentially one situation where you could be tied in revenue with someone on the Schuylkill and the Champlain and St. Lawrence. And if you're after them in priority, you might have to pick up the B&O, but pretty unlikely. So we now have 3 players on the D&H, and I am the sole player on the M&H. Would love to see someone pull early here. And of course, King Zombie sees that eventuality and is going to prevent that. I think I'll just pass here, see what the other players want to do in terms of bidding up other privates. So Feline goes on the CNA, leaving him and Miriam in similar positions in the auction. And Miriam, she could, well, she's the highest bid on the D&H, so she's not going to be able to pass out of that very easily. I was going to say if she pulled here or tried to get the Champlain and St. Lawrence, maybe she would just pass out of the D&H and hope to have a cheap private in the CNA. That's probably not going to be possible unless someone overbids her. That said, she has now bid on the Champlain and St. Lawrence, potentially in a little bit of trouble, although King Zombie has joined her. And I have no interest in joining another private auction. I would be the highest bidder by definition, so other players could just pass right out from under me, and I don't really want to be stuck with any of these privates other than the M&H at this point. So I'll just go ahead and pass. My only competition for the M&H is King Zombie right now. He's on 2 of the cheaper privates ahead of the M&H. Good chance that he's unable to price enforce. Feline has pulled and is on some pretty expensive privates. Miriam passes out of the Champlain and St. Lawrence, meaning that King Zombie has won a private for a decent price, but he's now in a rough spot in terms of price enforcing for these other privates. I would not like to see him get the D&H cheap here. I do want to see some contest for this, and we'll see if he's able to give them a run for their money. He only has $10 of private income, so he's not safe from the B&O just yet. If he were to lose the D&H, he will be highly motivated to bid me up on the Mohawk and Hudson, which is a little bit unfortunate for me, as I'll be in a similar situation with the $0. Feline has passed out of the D&H, and we'll see if Miriam is going to contest this. To some extent, it would be better for me if she didn't, just passed. I mean, King Zombie would come away from the auction in a pretty good spot, but he would not be able to risk winning the M&H. He wouldn't be able to price enforce very well. Miriam's going to press him a little bit, and I think it's still reasonable for King Zombie to stay in this. King Zombie staying right along with her, and we'll see. At this point, I'd like to see Miriam pass, which she does. This puts me in a good position. I think King Zombie's going to have a hard time bidding against me here. I'm pretty comfortable going up to 160 for this private. King Zombie needs to be a little bit careful about forcing me all the way up there. Looks like he's going to do it, though. So I get it for 155, $5 under where I said I was potentially going to think about passing. I think I'm okay with that. We have the same amount of cash. He has $5 more private income. So I guess technically he's in a little bit stronger position. But I'm not upset with my play there. We'll see what the CNA goes for. Last night it was very cheap. I would love to see this bid up a little bit more. I think Feline Wrangler has said that he's a new player, so yep, he gives it away for pretty cheap. Bad news. Miriam has priority. Oh, actually, yeah, she'll have priority when Feline buys this. So another game where the PRR player is given priority in the auction. People really need to watch Martin's video on the 1830 auction when they play this game. This happens way too frequently. As expected, the 3 of us are passing on the B&O, and hopefully Feline Wrangler will be doing his duty and falling on the B&O here. He'll be hurt the most, but I'll be also hurt. So he has bought it. We'll see what he pars it for. Pretty traditional to par it for 100, but last night we saw someone par it low so they could float it. We'll see if that happens again. I kind of wish he would, so he has. That's good. It puts a little bit of a damper on the PRR since the B&O players should be able to get into Lancaster earlier than them here. And Miriam is in a pretty strong position leaving the auction with the priority and PRR. So hopefully Feline's going to lay up to Lancaster and not down to the south. The other unfortunate part about this is that I'm third in priority, so King Zombie is going to have his first choice of company. I'm much more comfortable running the C&O than I am the NYNH, but if I have to take the NYNH, I will. Um, and I guess the nice part about this is that I am, there's a trade off there. So I won't get my choice of company necessarily, but I will operate later and potentially be under by privates in. Looks like we're in for a 4 company start, so good chance I'll be able to buy my private in SR or OR1. As expected, Miriam has taken the PRR. She min floats it, probably aware that she wants to operate late and have the opportunity to buy in the CNA. Of course, nothing she can really do about me and King Zombie floating after her. I assume that King Zombie will be floating for 67. He may have the option of floating a little bit higher than that. I think he does. Um, yeah, so he could float for 71, but I think that would be almost strictly an error. So I assume he'll be taking the CNO here. That said, with the PRR and the BNO both floating early, the CNO is a little bit risky. You could very easily be tokened out of the Lancaster tile and just be kind of neutered for most of the game. But he does take the CNO, probably aware of that risk. I'll be taking the M1H. And the question here is whether or not I will be able to get my private bought in and then subsequently sell down a few shares in the NYNH and buy the NYC. If it looks like that's going to be possible, that is a very strong combo. I love running the NYNH and NYC together, especially if I'm able to get the Reading and Allentown track as well. I mean, I think that's kind of the GOAT opening, basically. Pretty hard to beat that. We'll see if I'm able to snag that. King Zombie will probably have priority on me in the next stock round and is also fairly likely to be able to buy in his privates, so we may not see that come to pass. If we see King Zombie able to buy in his privates and have priority on me, I may be tempted to lay the NYH track towards the B&M and then float the NYC if King Zombie takes the B&M. I think the NYC is a better company overall, even without the friendly track, as long as the NYNH is cooperative. So everybody's just going around floating their companies, nothing too exciting in this stock round. Should be moving out of it pretty soon here. We see players just continuing to float. Feline took a while to think about that one. I don't think there's any real doubt about the right play here at this point. I imagine he was just away from the keyboard for a moment. The problem with live games and slow play is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If one player plays slow, other players get bored, they get distracted, and then they slow down, and it just is a positive feedback loop. First company, actually, PR floated first technically, but unfortunately for Miriam, she's not going to be able to benefit from floating first because King Zombie and I are operating after her. So she's going to be going not first in priority, no matter what she chooses here. Should probably buy a paying share, and she buys it in the B&O. Makes sense. So all the companies have floated. We're into the operating round, and I will be going last in priority. That's unfortunate for me. I don't know if it's going to matter. B&O has no chance to buy in his private, and I don't think he actually has a private to buy in. He could buy in the Schuylkill, but that's kind of a rounding error. Miriam should not be able to buy in her private. If the B&O buy, he's going south. We saw this last night too. I don't know why people do this. So he may be buying multiple 2 trains, which in theory could make it possible for Miriam to buy in her private. He would have to buy 3 of them though, which I don't think he's telegraphing he's set up for. May buy 2 here, which is going to guarantee that C&O can buy his private, which is actually pretty good news for me, just because I can then just buy a 3 train and my private still have some cash in the NYNH. We'll see if the B&O, so he is buying two trains. Okay. And I imagine that means he'll be leading this $80 track next time. Would like to see him lay it up to Lancaster, but he has basically no guarantee that he'll get there ahead of the PRR as a result of losing tempo in the Washington track. Medium has bought a single two train, so King Zombie is now in the position that I was last night in terms of do you buy three two trains to try and bring out your private. He's going to buy at least one, I'm sure. So if I have to buy two trains and the three, I will definitely be doing that. I forget which private I have, the M&H, so I'll have 220 plus 63, 283. I'll have to sell another three shares, I think, to float. I'll have to do the math there. I'm really bad at mental math. So I think I can get away with just selling two shares of the NYNH here, which is pretty nice. So I will have the NYC float, and I'll be laying friendly for that. I haven't thought too much about this tile versus this tile, or sorry, I guess it's this tile. This one's a little bit friendlier for the B&M, and I'm not going to be running the B&M, so we will lay this here, and I will be buying my private. So I have a little bit more money in the NYNH, at least token money, which is good. And we're into the next stock round. I like the way that that worked out for me, and I'm happy to snag the NYC here. So I know that I only have to sell two shares to float. Is it make sense to sell another share to float for a higher par? It might. I ran into the problem last game where I had to do a ton of withholding to get permanent trains. Um, I don't want people to buy up a bunch of my NYNH shares, but the likelihood of them to actually taking it over seems low. So it would be safe to sell three shares here. So it looks like with three shares sold, I could get up to a 76 par, which is pretty good. Four train and a five train potentially. The Feline is passing. He's probably anticipating me selling the NYNH and then buying a cheaper share. I think that's the right move. Miriam doesn't have a whole lot of options here, but is selling a PRR to buy the NYNH now. That's certainly a mistake. She's hurt her own stock value and bought a company that's going to be sold down. Even if she was hoping to take over the NYNH, you'd want to buy that later. King Zombie has bought the PRR share that was just sold, which means he's less likely to buy my NYNH share when I sell out of it. So now I have a decision to make. How many shares of the NYNH do I want to sell here? And valid options are two or three, I think. So if I sell down two, my float is 67. And if I sell down three, it's 76. You know what? I think I want a little bit of a higher par. I don't want to be in a position like I was last night where I was really under the gun. So if I sell down three, I'll have a bunch of market shares potentially. Feline might buy one of them. I don't think anybody's going to be able to steal this company from me. In theory, it's possible, but they would put themselves in a vulnerable position. So I'll sell three, and I'll float the NYC for 76. And that'll be it. We'll see what the other players react to that. Feline still can't buy two of my shares at least, so he will get a cheap NYNH, but not super cheap. So now I've got a yellow company with reasonable revenue potential, and I've got a reasonable high par on my second float. I probably will still be in a position where I have to do with some withholding. If players don't buy my market shares, I'll be in a better position, obviously. If they do buy my market shares, I may just continue to withhold on the NYNH. I should have a share lead on everybody going into the next stock round already, so I won't need a ton of cash to maintain that. My goal now is going to be race down to Reading and Allentown. If the PRR and the B&O are competing over Lancaster, there's a chance that I will be able to get there before the PRR. It's going to take 3 track points for the PRR to get there. It will take the NYC 3 track points to get there. NYNH is going to be able to upgrade Albany and then potentially contribute a track point. But I haven't actually game theoried this out, but I don't know if it's going to be possible for me to beat the PRR with proper play. But that's definitely my goal. It actually does look like I should be able to beat the PRR to Reading and Allentown if they don't have any help. The question then is, does the C&O player lay the sharp curve double dit on Akron? He really should to deny me that. I neglected to do that last night, so mistakes do happen. I've already made several in this game, but I can hope. I can dare to dream. So Feline actually investing in the CNO and not buying my market share, that's great news for me. I really hope that he holds this path. CNO has nice revenue, but the NYNH's revenue is going to be basically just as high now that we're in green. And I'd love to keep my market shares open, just paying into the company. If you can maintain your market in this game, you're basically keeping the revenue. So it's basically like I have 60% of the NYNH and a free NYC float. That's not strictly true, of course, but it's a way I tend to think about things. So PRR being sold and King Zombie will buy a share off my market. This puts the PRR into yellow as well. Um, the NYNH revenue is going to be much better than the PRR's revenue, but King Zombie did lose a little bit of efficiency there. Actually, I think he bought the share that Miriam had sold, so he didn't have to pay any premium at all. He's just kind of optimizing his portfolio. Makes sense. I think I still am in a situation where I'm incentivized to pay out here, even though two players have invested in my company. I still control 50% of the revenue compared to their 10%. So probably the right move to buy the NYNH by King Zombie there. I don't imagine that we'll see too many other actions. King Zombie, in theory, could sell one of his CNOs and buy an NYNH, be opening himself up to a dump in the next stock round potentially. But he should expect to have priority on me. Looks like that's what he's going to be doing. Yep. So now I think I'll be withholding probably. Just need to make sure that I don't end up in brown. Um, but yeah, I think I would play that the same way. Invest in the company that's been sold down. If he were to sell another share, he needs to be a little bit careful that I don't just buy his CNO out from under him, which would be possible. I'm planning to sell down an NYC and then I could dump the NYNH to get the cash for it. NYC and the CNO, not the best synergy between those two companies, but hey, it has a full treasury, and the NYNH is already laid the track for the NYC that it needs. So really not the end of the world. I don't imagine we'll be seeing that come to pass though. Looking at the market here, if I withhold twice on the NYNH, I'll be in the um, brown zone. So I'm not going to be able to withhold twice, but I'll definitely withhold at least once, just to disincentivize these leeches. And that will put King Zombie in a position, or I will be careful to put King Zombie in a position where I need to have him sell out and put me into brown. I'm going to sell my NYC, and that doesn't change any operating order. And I will be buying another player's share. So I think I'll buy the CNO in just a moment. Take that market share off. I think the other players are going to be passing still. And last action of the stock round should be me buying the CNO. CNO highly likely to be paying out. It is unfortunately likely that CNO gets sold down by King Zombie, so maybe I should just sit on cash here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to buy his CNO. And we should just be passing into this next operating round now. We'll see if that's the case. King Zombie may be thinking to himself, what if he fills the market and then tries to buy the NYNH? He's not able to fill the market actually, so he's not going to be able to lock my capital in. I can't technically defend the NYNH anyways, but I bet he's thinking about stealing this NYNH right now. I don't think there's much else in the game to be thinking about. So he ultimately passes, and I will pass, losing priority. No surprises for the NYC. Be linking up with New York here. And what are the chances that the 4 trains come out? Seems low. So if I just buy a 2 train out of the NYNH, I think I'll be able to run it again. That might be greedy. There's 4 threes left. All these players need at least one of them. And most of them want to buy in some pretty expensive privates. So buying the 4 might be kind of difficult for them. I'll get greedy. I'm going to buy a single 2 train. And then we will pass. So I thought for some reason that I was going to be able to beat the PRR to Lancaster, but now looking at the track situation, I'm pretty sure that I cannot. NYNH is going to upgrade to Albany. NYC will then lay. Oh no, I can. Okay. So NYNH's last operating order will be to lay Reading and Allentown, and I don't think that's possible for anybody to defend against. B&O not contesting Lancaster. That's annoying. Um, I think this is strictly worse than just heading up to Lancaster. He's operating ahead of the PRR, so even if the PRR lays Lancaster, B&O is going to be guaranteed to get the upgrade in there. It's not like he's going to be blocked. Um, and if he wants to run two trains, he should have just committed to laying the token in Washington. I don't get this kind of half measure strategy here. Hopefully nobody wants to push trains. It would be sad for me to fall back on the NYC train list. I've opened myself up for that. So we'll see if he just sits on a single three. I think he has to. He's going to have no cash in this company. And we'll have to do a ton of withholding. He's the B&O player. He doesn't have a private to buy in to get a second float. Looks like he does just sit on a single three. And the C&O probably laying towards Chicago. They are. And we'll lay the Akron and Canton next time. And we'll be able to see if he gives me the number two. Can't imagine that he will. Hopefully he pays out here. So he did pay out and he bought a single three. And Miriam will now be in the position of potentially buying the three and the four, but it's going to make it extremely hard for her to buy the C and A, which I think is really her priority. So it should be safe. I might be in a position to buy the four with the NYC. And I sold down the share. Is that going to come back to bite me? It will not. So I'll be able to rust the two train in the PRR at least. I don't know if I really want to do that though, because it'll be rusting my own NYNH. So I may want to just sit on these trains. Can shuffle cash into the NYNH, for instance, and buy the four with that company. Looks like there might be a three train available. I think I got sidetracked here. Miriam kind of debating what she wants to do. I think it's pretty no-brainer, though, to lay Lancaster. Debatable whether or not you want to drop the token right away, but she may be very cash poor once she buys in her private, so it makes sense to just lay the token that you need. Upgrading Albany, and this will be fine. I will just drop the token here for the revenue and run both my trains. So we determined that I'd be withholding once only, and I think my revenue next turn will be better than this one, so I will withhold this time and pay out next time. I think that I could withhold twice safely, actually. King Zombie is going to potentially be able to grab this, but he can't actually buy more than one share because we aren't playing with the IPO counts as brown for the multiple share buying rule. So it's not like he'd be able to snag the presidency. Plus, I can buy the train out of the NYC if needed to reduce my capital. And I don't know that he would want that. I think my play here is to force King Zombie to sell a share in the NYNH and snag it. I don't think I want to put him in a position where he feels comfortable parasitizing this company. So if I pay out and he sells one share, I'll be in orange. If I withhold, I'll be in brown. That might be the play. I do need cash, but if he sells out, I'll be so cheap, even enough cash here will make it easy for me to buy that. So B&O player running three trains, but doesn't have three routes and is paying for 160, pretty good revenue. Big question here is how C&O lay Akron. Almost certainly going to be laying the sharp double dit, denying me, where is it? This one here, the number two. That's, I think, objectively the move. We'll see if he's eager to cotton on to that. He does. So now the question is, instead of running into New York with a sharp turn, should I just lay a straight to get into Lancaster? Um, I could potentially snag that token and deny it to the CNO and the BNO. I would have to do some turn order or operating order manipulation, or else the BNO could snipe it by upgrading a sharp turn here. So CNO buying his privates, and if people sell down the BNO, am I going to be able to operate ahead of it? Probably not. Um, he's going to be running at 68, and it's unlikely that the NYC is allowed to run at 71. Someone's going to tank it, so it runs after it. I'm just thinking if it makes sense to try and get the token in Lancaster. I don't think it's going to be possible. That might be pushing my limits in terms of greed. CNO may be debating whether or not he buys a 3 here. That would force the NYC to buy the 4, um, because the NYC is not going to be able to run that 2 train into the next operating round. Someone will rust it before it runs. He will be leaving the CNO very cash poor, um, but he may not care if he's selling out. So it looks like he instead was debating whether or not to suitcase the CPR and decides ultimately to take advantage of that private. That makes the only viable companies in the game the Erie and the B&M. And where is he operating in terms of priority? He's operating after Miriam, so Miriam's going to have her choice of float, and King Zombie's going to be stuck with the leftovers. He also doesn't have enough to float right now without selling. Um, he may get enough if I pay out with the NYH, which I think it's looking like I will probably do. We'll see. If I withhold, it'll put him in an even more precarious position in terms of selling down out of the NYH. So maybe I should withhold and then buy a train out of the NYC in order to disincentivize him holding my stocks. Buy the 3 with the NYC, withhold on the N1H, and put all my cash into the NYC. It might make sense. I think if I can end up with a ton of the NYNH, I'm in a very strong position in this game. PRR, laying Philadelphia, lays it correctly so that they have the option of laying into New York. And now I'm going to get access to Reading and Allentown. So laying that, running my 2 train, I'll pay this out, buy the 3, and then the NYNH is going to get the Reading and Allentown. And here's the question. Do I lay the straight or the gentle curve? If I lay a gentle curve, there's no guarantee that I'll get anything in Philadelphia and Trenton. If I lay the straight, there is a chance I could get this token in Philadelphia and Trenton. Lancaster has not been upgraded, so Baltimore has to upgrade and to get into Lancaster, but is not going to be able to immediately token with just 1 track. So this token is pretty guaranteed for the NYC at this point, which is very, very strong. Even if the CNO were to operate ahead of me, he's not going to be able to get there either. So I think I'm pretty much guaranteed getting into Lancaster here, which is excellent. Having tokens in Albany and Lancaster, very, very strong. I will clear my trains and run for just a little bit more cash than I would otherwise. And I think we agreed that I was going to withhold here and then buy the 2 train out of the NYC and make the NYNH very unattractive for the other players to hold on to. So $1 in the company, no permanent trains. Hopefully we'll see King Zombie sell out here, and then I can snap up some very cheap brown shares, 2 shares. He's right ahead of me in priority too, so nobody's going to be able to snag those shares before I do once he sells. This might work out nicely for me. I'm feeling this strategy. Feline is parring the CPR of all companies, parring it for min, and not going to be able to float this, and it's not a suitcaseable company. So this is a clear error. Just really bad. He looks like he's going to stick to his guns here. Nobody writing in the chat anything that will make him reconsider. He's going to regret this. I think that we will be seeing him come in last place as a result of this. He has no cash in the B&O, not going to be able to suitcase the CPR. He may well go bankrupt. I think I have to play this game assuming that Feline is going to be going bankrupt at this point, which is problematic because I am not winning right now. So when Feline bankrupts, I will lose. Miriam technically ahead right now as a result of the CNA buy-in, and also has her choice of the Erie and the B&M. Either of these are great options. B&M, pretty easy to block from having any good runs. Erie, going to take a very long time to build track for itself with no help. So that's my saving grace here, is that Miriam doesn't have a good company to float. King Zombie also ahead of me and is probably in even a worse position than Miriam in terms of companies, because whichever their company is marginally better is going to be taken by Miriam. So my ideal scenario here is that King Zombie sells 2 shares in the NYNH and I snap them both up. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll just sell one, but even so, I would be happy to take it. Now the question is, would he feel comfortable not selling one? And I think that while he may, call my bluff in terms of dumping the NYNH on him, he actually cannot float without selling at least 1 share of the NYNH. So that's really good for me, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to withhold on the NYNH for that second time. I am very nervous about this CPR strategy from Feline. He's not going to be able to float it, which is the only saving grace here. Someone could float it on him, but he's not at imminent risk of bankruptcy. He has a 3-train, so he has some wiggle room in terms of affording permanent trains. If he were to float this CPR somehow, he would be having to buy up a bunch of non-permanent trains for it, and then he would bankrupt. So hopefully he doesn't float this in the next stock round, or even worse in this stock round. It would be hard for him to do. He'd have to sell the C&O and sell some B&O shares as well. So Miriam has bid on the Erie, and she pars it at the minimum price. Oh, sorry, not the minimum price. At 76. So right where the NYC was parred as well. Means she'll be operating ahead of the NYC, but that does not matter, at least in the first operating round of this set. We're not going to be looking at any permanent trains. I would like to see her operate ahead of the B&O. B&O has a 2-train that I'd like to see rusted. I do have the cash in theory. No, I don't. I was going to say I could trash the B&O. I'd have to sell the C&O to do it. I could buy and sell a C&O, get $2 extra there, and then trash the B&O as well to have these companies operate behind the Erie. Maybe worth doing that. King Zombie's in a rough spot here. He really doesn't want to sell my NYNH, I think, but he's realizing he's going to have to if he wants to float anything. If my 2 trains aren't running, I don't want anybody else's 2 trains to run. So I would like to see the Erie float or operate earlier than the B&O. Miriam would be able to rescue this PRR and put some cash in the company by buying the 2-train before she rusted the 2s, which is, fine. Not the end of the world. King Zombie really debating what to do here. As noted, I think it is a rough position, so I don't begrudge him taking the time. I think he has to sell at least 1 share here. Maybe he doesn't sell both, but you have to imagine he sells one. And there it is. He sold one. So that's 2 cheap brown shares for me, and I could not be happier with my position in this game at this point. False alarm stream. He's undid his action. I think he's going to ultimately redo it and sell, but I'll pause and just let him make up his mind. So interestingly, now he's actually buying the NYNH. That is a disaster for me. I will, I think, allow him to do this. I'm not going to dump on him. If he wants to steal the company, that's fine. And I will sit on my shares. He's going to give me priority into the next stock round, so he may be forced to withhold. But I will buy and sell the C&O here, and then I will tank the B&O as well. That's going to force me to invest in my own NYC, I think, potentially PRR, which would be fine. So I'll sell 2 there, and then I'll go back and get the B&O in a moment. King Zombie may take the NYNH, and that's fine. So Feline is now going back and buying a brown NYNH share. That's bad news for King Zombie. I'm not selling these shares, so he's going to be running this as a 40% company, which is going to get him pretty much nowhere. NYNH is okay. It's not a bad company, but yeah, just not good. So now he hasn't even taken the presidency. He's looking like he's going to force float the CPR, try and force a bankruptcy, I guess. I don't know. I like the idea of pressure me in the N1H, but I don't think he's executing it properly at this point. So my plan here was to buy and sell the IPO of the BNO. And I can only afford one share, so I'll do that. Now he should be operating behind. Actually, he's still operating ahead of the Erie. That's unfortunate. Well, we'll see if anybody wants to help with that endeavor. It's worthwhile, and I get a few extra bucks. Question here is now, do I buy a NYNH share off the IPO and just secure their presidency? I suppose I could. We'll see if King Zombie wants to try and steal it from me still. It's very likely that King Zombie's going to give me priority, so it's very risky to be holding the NYH here. Pay out a couple times, bring it out of brown, and then dump it back on him with, permanent trains pending. NYNH is a good company in partnership with the NYC, but now the NYC is going to be getting that PRR token, the Lancaster token. NYNH is strictly worse company. And I have enough cash right now to buy my NYC market and then an NYNH IPO if I want it. I don't know. I don't know if King Zombie is going to pressure me on the NYNH or not. I've kind of declared to him that I'm not going to dump the NYNH since I've had 2 opportunities to do it now, and I haven't. So I guess he feels secure. I don't know that he wants the presidency. I guess if he's okay with me dumping potentially, he's telegraphing that he would be okay um, taking the presidency. So we may see him do that. I'd be surprised if he takes a CNO, the CPR. I don't think he wants that presidency. I'm not sure what he's trying to do there. That part is confusing to me. I guess he's just looking to force the float. As noted, this is a massive liability for Feline. But if King Zombie gets the CPR, he's in just as bad as a position, basically. No synergy with the CNO and the CPR. It's a low float, and he's going to have to suitcase it. He cannot suitcase it. So just kind of strange. I don't know what he's going for there. My next move, I think, will be to buy the NYNH brown share, secure the presidency. If I pay twice on the NYNH this time, I'll end up in 50, and then when I sell down, he'll still be in brown, so it won't be safe to sell down, but I could put him in the same position he is in this stock round and see if he's willing to risk it. So now he's got a decision. Does he actually want the presidency of the CPR? Looks like he does. This is crazy. I cannot explain his decision making here. This seems like a terrible decision. I'll buy my NYNH, so I'll be paying on both my companies and have really good runs for both of them. I take that back. The runs are not going to be amazing, but later in the game, they'll be pretty good. I really don't know why King Zombie has floated the CPR here, and I also don't know why Feline is sitting on these 2 shares. That's not safe either. I mean, King Zombie is looking like he's going to be going last in priority, which is pretty bad for him. He has floated the CPR and has very little cash at his disposal. We'll see. I think Feline just passes. Looks like he's auto-passing. And then King Zombie has given me priority. All right. Well, I don't know. I think this has all been a huge mistake from King Zombie, unfortunately. What's he going to do is his last stock action. Could buy an NYNH and have 4 shares there. Alternatively, may just look for a paying share elsewhere. He technically has a share lead. Oh, so he's sold out of the NYNH now. That's interesting. So, this is just terrible. I'm going to sell a single share of the NYC and buy all these NYNH shares. It cost me one of these $67 shares, but I'm getting 3 shares for $10 each now. Yeah, just not good. And now he's bought my NYC from the IPO, knowing that I'm going to sell this down. Yeah, he's falling apart in this game. I'm getting everything I want here. I can't complain about anything moving forward, I don't think, after this. I guess it potentially means that King Zombie won't be going last in priority, but do I care about that now? I have 12 shares, Brown Company, and Great Track. I think he's going to give me priority too. Yep, so I have priority. He bought my market share. It's a secure presidency. I'm not worried about it at all. He tanked my companies, and I am far behind in net worth, but I don't think we're going to see a bankruptcy. Um, King Zombie would run the risk of bankrupting himself if he pushed for one. And yeah, none of the players are safe. I have permanent train for 2 trains distributed between the NYC and the NYNH. I'm in a good position. Um, yeah, I only have $53. I wish I had enough for one more share, but not going to be the case. Looks like everybody's passing except for King Zombie. Is he just going to go around trashing people's shares? I suppose he could, but I don't think we're going to be looking at a bankruptcy. There's too many 4 trains left to see a 6 come out in this operating round, especially with these low pars, 67 and 76. There's just not enough cash in the game for someone to push trains aggressively like this. So um, King Zombie has bought a B&O from the IPO. So he's just going to continue trashing this. He probably sees that the Erie can rust its 2 trains, and maybe he's going to do what I did, which is fine. I would like to see it. Instead, he's going to buy his own C&O. Okay. That's a little bit less good. Am I wrong in assuming that the NYC is going to get the token? I don't think I'm wrong. Even if the PRR upgrades Lancaster and opens that up, C&O cannot get to Pittsburgh and Lancaster before the Albany track does. I suppose that the PRR could lay unfriendly track for the NYC. That would be a way for me to lose out on that token. That's unfortunate. I didn't think about that. So I don't know what Zombie's doing here. He's just getting a single dollar arbitrage, but he hurts his net worth doing that. Actually, selling it didn't change the stock value, so it didn't hurt his net worth. Just putting shares in the market. Okay, makes a little bit more sense. Now he's buying the PRR, and we pass into the stock round, or into the operating round. Okay. Pretty interesting stock round there. I think that I got everything I wanted, and I think I'm in a very strong position in this game now. We'll see how this Lancaster token ends up. Would be a little bit of a shame were I to be denied that. I neglected to think that Miriam could potentially lay a X tile here, or even lay a K pointing south to block me. What would she do instead of upgrade Lancaster? I don't know that she's motivated to lay Pittsburgh. She does have 2 trains, but only one of them's going to be running. Laying Pittsburgh would potentially be helpful for the Erie player, I suppose, which is her. But really, I don't think we're going to see that. B&O player, crazy decision making, upgrading Washington, not even going to shoot for the Lancaster tile at all. Still only running 2 of his 3 trains. I wasn't able to rust his trains before they ran, but at least he's only running 2 of them. And he tokens in Washington. Oh my god. He can run 3 of his trains, but at what cost? So I will be paying out in full on both my companies this operating round. And am I the only player with all paying shares? I am. Feline somehow maintained his investment in the CPR for no reason. Miriam is floating a new company, and King Zombie floated a new company. So I should be rejoining the land of the living in terms of net worth very shortly. I don't think I'm in a position where I need to do any withholding. I have permanent train money already. The only question is, do I leave Brown? I don't even leave Brown if I pay out twice, so it's a no-brainer. I'm going to pay out twice. Feline taking a long time to figure out his routes here. Pretty clear what should be done. There's really only one option that allows him to run all three of his trains maximally. Baltimore to Washington, Washington to South, and Baltimore to Philadelphia via Atlantic City. Taking him a while to do that. Looks like we get there in the end and probably going to be paying this out. Not unreasonable to withhold, would give him permanent train money, and this is the last time he's going to be running these threes, or these twos. So it looks like he does. Good news for me, as I'm not an investor in that company. And he actually buys the first four. Okay. So that's a mistake because now he doesn't have permanent train money. He's going to be train locked at the fives. So even though he didn't end up being the president of the CPR, still a bankruptcy risk. It's especially a mistake when you realize that the Erie was going to be buying that four anyways, so it's not like the twos were going to be running for anybody else regardless of his decision here. He does deny Miriam the opportunity to shuffle cash into the PRR, but that's kind of gravy, not a make or break decision point there. Erie now operating, does have access to green. Looks like she's motivated to get over into Rochester. Probably the right move. NYC and NYNH have all the track they're going to need for the rest of the game, though, so not the end of the world for me. Looks like she's reconsidered the orientation of the track, but still leaving herself a opportunity to get into Rochester. And unfortunately, I'm realizing that because of operating order, if I am blocked at Lancaster, I'll also lose out on the Rochester token. It's not going to be possible for the NYC to operate and token there before the Erie gets a token there. If the NYNH was operating before the NYC, it would be, but unfortunately, the NYC is going to lay this track, and then the NYNH will lay this. So if I don't get this token here, I'm in a little bit of a rough spot, but really not. I'm still very happy with my position in this game. We'll see what she does at Lancaster. I think the right move is to block me, so hopefully she doesn't. So she does, and she lays it for the B and O. So at least she's screwing over the C and O at least. Hopefully the B and O avails himself of this opportunity. In theory, it would be possible for me to still get the token on Lancaster if we somehow broke into Brown, but I don't think we'll be seeing that. That's basically a pipe dream at this point. I think King Zombie's game is over if he doesn't get this token in Lancaster. B&O has two options, both valid upgrades to get in there. It would be his last token, but it's important for him to get that. Laying towards Pittsburgh as expected, and he's paying out. I think King Zombie trashing stock actually did change operating order enough that I lost out on the token on Lancaster. That's kind of unfortunate for me. He's operating this garbage CPR company, and he's going to be forced to buy a 4-train for it, it looks like. Yeah, I'm really, really kind of dumbfounded by the decision to take this presidency. Don't know what he was doing there. He's tokened out at Albany. I guess he could try and contest the track for Rochester, but pretty easy to block that. I think I'll go ahead and do that most likely. I'm running 2 3-trains, so I could upgrade New York. And I guess that makes sense to do. I'm the only one that's going to be running this. So I'll do that, and then I'll block him in this tile in the next operating round. I'll be operating before him because he's falling back. We'll pay this out. And start the process of blocking him. I'm not going to get that Rochester token no matter what I do, unless the Erie player messes up pretty badly. We're back to the B&O. Hopefully the B&O realizes they need Lancaster desperately. So the B&O player going crazy here, laying random track and passing on the Lancaster token. That is unfortunately another huge error on his part, one with big potential implications for the rest of the game. Laying expensive track that doesn't improve his runs at all, just really kind of inexcusable. So looks like he'll be running for a lot less money than he otherwise could, and has basically set himself up for bankruptcy with $5 going to be train locked with no ability to buy a 5-train. Yeah, really bad. He's withholding again. Bad news for his investors. I like that at least. But if you're going to withhold, why not spend the money on the token? So here's where I think I'll lose out on the Rochester token. Erie laying, but actually not tokening Rochester. That's a game-ending mistake from that player as well. Boy, Lots of errors being made here. I think I'm still by far in the best position. Everybody's just kind of committing suicide with these decisions. CPR messed up starting the CPR, or sorry, King Zabi messed up starting the CPR, so that's a game-ending error there. B&O just going crazy down south, and then the Erie player going to be tokened out at Rochester, so going to have very poor runs for the rest of the game. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on 7 shares in the NYNH and have permanent train money for both my companies. And the B&M's available. I think I have priority, don't I? I do. So maybe I'll just take the B&M. B&M's not a great company, but if you're running it with the NYNH and the NYC, lay friendly track for it here, can't complain about that. Yeah, I'll have 3 companies with runs into New York. Basically no train liability. This is coming up excellent for me. Need to make sure that I don't allow any runs into New York from the south through Lancaster. And I think that should be easy enough to assure. So the NYC gonna block the CPR here. And how best to do this? Could lay this track here, and that would very effectively block him. He would eventually get a run into Albany, but nothing better than that. This, I could lay this, but this would get him into Rochester potentially down the road. I guess if he was going to head somewhere, I'd rather him head to Rochester. I see. So the danger here is if I upgrade this instead of laying towards Rochester, I lose that token, and the NYNH is not going to get it. So do I care to block the CPR? I guess I don't, right? I think this token's more important. Okay, so running my 3 train. Not able to take advantage of that Rochester yet, but I'll pay this out. CPR, getting a gift can hit Albany at least, but whatever. That's not a good run. And now he's tokened out at Rochester and at Albany, and I can prevent him from getting the track on D16 to bypass Rochester. So I think he's still in a lot of trouble. Let's see how many 4 trains there are left. There's 1 left, so if I float the B&O or B&M high enough, I'll be able to snap up all these 5 trains. Question is, how am I going to afford that? A payout on the NYNH is not going to be enough here. Should be safe for me to lay this upgrade and then run into Rochester, I believe. Just looking at operating order, I just need to make sure that one of my companies operates before the CPR, and that's guaranteed to be the case, unless the CPR were to float up, which is highly, highly unlikely. Should be seeing the CPR sold down even. So I think that it's safe for me to lay this track here. Eventually I'm going to want this and then the brown upgrade, but that doesn't help me right now. Could lay this, and that would help me now, and potentially allow the B&M to run through there later. So we'll do that, get an extra $10 on my run by running into Rochester, pay that out. And then the question is, how am I going to be floating the B&M? I'll have to min par it, which is a little bit problematic, because it's going to have to buy the 4 first. I suppose I could buy a train across, so buy the train out of the NYC and then buy 2 5 trains with that. If I buy 5 trains, if I push trains here, am I just going to bankrupt someone and lose the game as a result? I don't think so. Everybody has 4 trains, and it's going to be hard for them to bring out the 6. The question is, I guess, how am I going to get the cash to float the B&M? And I don't think I will. So I may have to give up the B&M move. Who would float it if I didn't? Hard to say. Feline, he's withheld so much he's not going to be able to just sell out of the CPR and get cash to float it. Miriam, she's not in a position to float it. And King Zombie's not really either. I suppose he could dump the CPR if Feline plays badly, which he has been, and then get a float of the B&M. But I can kill the B&M. Okay, that's fine. I'll just pay this out, and I don't think I'll be taking the B&M actually. So not taking the B&M here. What do I want? B&O's revenue is okay, but he's withholding so much. I don't want anything to do with that. Could buy my own NYC, or I could buy the C&O off the IPO. That might be the move. Question is it going to be sold down? The C&O gets sold down, it's ledged, so I'm not going to lose any revenue there. I don't think the C&O is going to be dumped. Feline might sell a share. I'll just buy the C&O market share. Oops, did I buy market? I wanted to buy the IPO. 1 second. There we go. And we're on to Feline. Hopefully he jumps out of the CPR and instead is investing further in the CPR. I don't know what's going on here. This guy wants to bankrupt himself, as far as I can tell. I think this is going to be another game where I end up losing because someone doesn't know what they're doing and bankrupts, unfortunately. The other players are a little bit ahead of me. Miriam buying my NYC from the market. Terrible news for me. King Zombie buying the B&O. I wouldn't touch the B&O with a 10-foot pole. He's withholding so much. I'll buy my own market from the NYC. Fine. Feline, he's passing. Miriam, one more share for her. So I just need to make sure that King Zombie gives me priority again, then I can get that B&M. He's got one more share. Depends what he buys here. So he bought the C&O, and I think I will just pass. I'm sitting on a bunch of cash, but I'm prioritizing priority over this. I think my revenue is enough. Not sure what just happened there. I think someone undid some stuff. Still, I think King Zombie buys a share here, and then I'll just pass. Pains me to sit on cash like this, but I think there's going to be some withholding, and I really want that B&M. King Zombie may be debating whether or not he wants priority. Miriam's just given him the opportunity. He would have to sit on a bunch of cash in order to do that. So if he doesn't buy a share here, expecting to keep priority, I'll buy shares, take away his priority. It will give Feline priority, which I am not at all worried about. He's playing so badly. Yeah, I think King Zombie's really debating whether or not he wants to take priority here. So he ended up buying the NYC, which means I'll pass. And I think we will see the other players, Miriam in particular, pass here, and then I will have priority for the B&M. In terms of share density and share limit, I am one share behind Miriam right now, but I think my shares are just strictly better than her. She's running the Erie for like 60 and will be until Brown. So if we see a stall here, I'll just pull gradually ahead. I don't have any of the B&O shares, but this B&O player is just playing so badly. I really couldn't justify investing in his company. Hoping Miriam doesn't mess this up for me. What should she be thinking about doing here? I mean, she could sell out of some shares here and then float the B&M herself. She'd have 3 companies, which is pretty strong, but she doesn't have a lot of cash in her companies, and we are looking at permanent trains. If she floats the B&M, she's going to have to buy that 4. But she has passed, so I have priority. Okay, this is working out great for me. We'll see what kind of crazy shenanigans the B&O player gets up to. Is he going to continue to lay a $120 track that's going to get him nowhere? I think the Magic 8 Ball is leaning towards yes on that. It would be pretty crazy if he withheld again. The other players floated him up, so if his goal was to get into the yellow zone, he's actually further away than he probably hoped he was. That's pretty funny. The only thing that's changed here is that now I have to debate whether or not I want to stay in the brown or orange zone. 2 payouts would technically bring me into yellow, and I'd have to sell a share. 1 withhold would be enough to keep me brown, of course. Maybe worth doing just 1 withhold. Give me a little bit extra cash. I'm technically short of permanent train money now. I probably think it's worth that. So he does lay another $120 track. This is wild. This is so bad. If you're watching this video, please don't do this. Oh man. So he's tokened Philadelphia. As we saw last night, this tends to not work out for people. He may get the upgrade into New York, he may not, and he's committed his final token there. He has literally $0 in the company, and is he going to withhold? He's been withholding so far. Love to see him continue to withhold. The other players have invested heavily in his company. He does. Oh my God, another withhold. This investment is not paying out for these players. This is exactly why I refused to invest in his company, by the way. I just knew that this crazy stuff was going to continue. PRR laying some friendly track for the Erie, but Erie not going to be able to take advantage of that until Brown. I don't think the Erie is possible to be tokened out, even if someone else were to control the PRR. Actually, the CNO still has a token, so it is in theory possible for the Erie to lose out on Pittsburgh, but I think we should expect them running through there eventually. PRR running for 120. So I do need to be a little bit careful. Their runs are technically better than the runs that I've got so far. If I slow play this too long, I will fall behind. But now that I've got the B&M and I'm going to be able to float it for pretty much max par, I think I should be in a great position to win this game. I've been saying that for a while, of course, but I'm getting a little bit more confident. My priority here is to lay this yellow track so that King Zombie has no chance to bypass Rochester and just kill that company. Okay, so I will work on getting that done. How to best accomplish that. So if I lay this, there is a valid upgrade that would bring him down here. If I lay this one though, point it up, there is no valid upgrade to get him down here without laying some expensive track. So I think we'll probably do that. The other option would be to lay this, which would also block him. One thing to think about is what other track people are going to want elsewhere. And I think this will be fine. Hard to say exactly what people are going to need. So running for 110, just a little bit less than the PRR and the CNO, paying that out. And we'll just watch the 4 train pass on by. I don't think anybody has significant market shares paying into their company currently. Only the CNO does, so he's getting a little bit of a benefit here. Eventually, I'll probably buy this 3 train out of the NYC and then just emergency buy some trains. CPR thinking about what to do here. We'll just look at the spreadsheet for a moment while we wait for King Zombie. In terms of revenue, I was pulling way ahead in the last set of ORs. I think that will continue here, especially with the B&O withholding and these players investing so heavily in it. I'm just going to continue to pay. I would think I will do one withhold on the MNH, but I should pull further ahead. And then when I start the B&M, we'll see the train rush kick off. I just need to be careful that I don't lose to a bankruptcy from Feline. That's my big fear here. Not sure where CPR thinks he's going here. Maybe just throwing away track. He could look to get into Boston eventually and then assume that I'll give him this $120 track to get down into New York, but that seems highly unlikely. He's going to be competing against 3 different companies that are all motivated to block him. Erie, no valid track for them until Brown. Losing out on this Rochester token is a huge mistake for the Erie. So Miriam was able to block me at Lancaster, but misplayed on Rochester. Oh, I misspoke. She did have a valid upgrade. So I should be able to block her from getting into Hamilton, Toronto, or anywhere interesting. I'll just have to think about the track a little bit more. Don't want to lose out on the token in Hamilton and Toronto. Both the sharp upgrade straights are taken. So if I lay a gentle sharp turn here, I think I'll have blocked her from getting into Hamilton, Toronto for the foreseeable future. The track that she would need would be this one down here, which I unfortunately don't control. She controls with the PRR, so theoretically possible for her to get that upgrade down the road. Suppose it starts to make sense to look at operating order here because the B&M is going to be floating, and depending on where it floats determines who gets the 5 trains, obviously. B&M should be able to buy the 4 and the 5, and then looks like the PRR and C&O will be operating guaranteed basically after the B&M floats. I don't think it makes sense to par the B&M for anything less than 100. Then the NYC probably will not be able to pick up a second 5 train. We'll have to pick up a 6. Um, and do we see a bankruptcy at that point? It's possible. Feline, if he doesn't dump out of this CPR, may be in a lot of trouble. NY and H, not a whole lot of interesting track for him. May just want to cut off the CPR. So I think this will be kind of tragic for him. If I lay this on my next upgrade, I can lay the straight across here and cut him off with the NYC. NYC is going to want to lay track over here though. So that's fine though, because both of the sharp upgrades have already been used, so he's not going to be able to upgrade this tile. Okay. So we'll submit and pay that out. I don't think I'll have a better route in the next run, so it makes sense to just pay out and withhold next time, I think. Okay. So I'll skip trains, and we are into the next operating set. B&O falling way back in operating order with all these withholds. I'm a little bit concerned that we'll see a bankruptcy if he doesn't withhold again now. So the other players may be getting even less revenue than they otherwise. Speaking of revenue, again, I am pulling slightly ahead. Still technically behind Miriam, and I will have to withhold, I think, in this next operating round. So I won't be able to extend my lead on her. I'm just paying attention to this closely because I'm worried that we're going to see a bankruptcy. Miriam, I assume she's laying towards Dunkirk and Buffalo to help out the Erie, but again, as noted in Brown, she's going to need Brown to actually break before she can take advantage of that. I was looking at operating order before, and to some extent it matters that the PRR is operating first, but technically they don't have money for permanent train yet. If they withhold, they'll be a lot closer, but I don't imagine, so they are withholding, they see the danger. They are still outside of 450 with this. If they get an upgrade, they might be able to get a few extra dollars, but they're going to need a run for like, what, 136? So even a $10 upgrade is not going to be enough. They should be able to upgrade Philadelphia and Trenton. So they actually buy the 4 here. Wow. Okay. C&O within striking distance of the 5s. CPR not. Erie is. So the NYC will end up with a 5. Wow. Interesting. I think this is a situation where, unfortunately, I'm going to lose when Feline bankrupts. Pushing trains early like this is going to force that, I think. C&O withholding, and so both these players have withheld. I only have 1 share invested in those 2 companies. This is not quite enough to put me ahead. CPR not going to be able to withhold for the 5 here, and doesn't have any valid upgrades for this. We are in brown now. Interesting. And none of them are upgrading. So wait, what happened there? I see. So the C&O bought the first 5, so that's why he wasn't able to upgrade Philadelphia. That means that the B&O is going to get the upgrade on Philadelphia. That's great news for him. Wow, I don't know that Miriam thought about that. Yeah. I thought that the NYC was going to be operating ahead of the Erie. Looks like she will get this upgrade. That's okay. Not the end of the world. If she upgrades that, I can, in theory, still drop a token in Hamilton, Toronto. She's going to be using all of her money for the 5 train she's going to be buying. Very unexpected that we'll be seeing the B&O with that Philadelphia track. I hope that he recognizes what a gift he's getting here and takes advantage of it. That will make his run potential a whole lot better. CPR upgrading to try and bypass Rochester, but going to get nowhere fast with that. Going to cost him 120 bucks, which he desperately needs for a permanent train in the very near future. Should be seeing the second 5 train bought here, and then the NYC will pick up a 5 as well. If the NYC picks up the last 5, that means the B and M should be getting the first 6. And when the 6 comes out, everyone but me has a 4 train. So I'll have a 6 and a 5, and I should have enough cash for that second 6. I'll just have to make sure I shuffle trains carefully. Um, all right. May see a little bit of a stall before the D then. And falling back on the NY and H when the 6 comes out is not the end of the world. I was hoping to basically withhold on that company to stay brown anyways. Erie actually not upgrading for um, Hamilton, Toronto, and going to be heading down to Pittsburgh. Not really sure about that. Pittsburgh isn't really going to get her anywhere. Could, in theory, lay down into Washington now through Pittsburgh as a result of the expensive track lays of the B&O player. But almost certainly heading towards Hamilton, Toronto will be better long-term runs. So it looks like she's reconsidering that. Probably going to be laying towards Hamilton, Toronto instead. Nope. So she sticks to her guns. And as a result, the NYC, do I lay over here towards Hamilton, Toronto? Or do I, yeah, why not? I think I absolutely do that. And if I lay this, she paid out. So I'll be ledged at 70 if I get sold down, I mean. Should be possible to tank her so that she operates after me and I can block her out here with the track lay of the NYC. I do have brown tiles available. What am I thinking though? I'll upgrade this. I'm the only one able to run to New York right now. Um, and I'll get much more revenue as a result for both my companies. That helps the B&O a little bit. But the B&O could use the help. I'm worried that he's going to bankrupt. So we'll do that for now. Running for 130. And is it worthwhile potentially leaving Hamilton, Toronto undefended? I may come to regret this. That's all right. I'll contest it later. Pay this out. Buy the last 5. And now I have a ton of cash left over in the NYC. May make sense to buy the 5 into the NYNH just so it doesn't fall back. And then I'll have a bunch of cash in the NYC, can combine that with the B&M, pick up those 6 trains. That might be the move. I'll have to think about that. I just want to think about my 6 train run for a minute. So the NYC can run a 6 train pretty much no problem. The B&M running a 6 train might be a little underwhelming. I'm probably going to hit like 3 dits with that. 1 second, I'll come back to this. So the B&O, what is he doing? He is giving away the Philadelphia and Trenton. This is just kind of inexcusably bad. I don't really know what to say about this. It's painful. All right, I'll upgrade Albany, get a few extra bucks on my run. I submit this, withhold it, and then I buy the 5 out of the NYC, I think. That is almost 6 train money right ahead for it. And I have shares that I can sell to float the B&M. B&M won't be floating very high, but I don't know that it needs to float that high now that I have basically 6 train money in both companies. Yeah, so I'll buy the 5 out of the NYC. And the NYNH does pretty well with a 5 train, it looks like. Can hit Albany and Boston. So I'll only have to hit 1 dit, I believe. No, I'll have to hit 2 dits. It's a little bit unfortunate. Okay, well. Still makes sense to do it, I think. So we'll buy this over for 220, and we're into the stock round. So I'll sell the C&O here, and then we'll be floating the B&M, and I can actually float that for 76, which is super nice because 630 is the 6 and 120 for that track. Um, so I'm in good shape. Yep. Okay. And I think this game is basically over at this point. The only question is if Feline goes bankrupt, um, or I suppose King Zombie could go bankrupt on the CPR. And if that were to happen at an inopportune moment, Miriam might be able to win this on me. Um, but I don't think anybody deserves this besides me. Feline is leaving himself open to the dump on the CPR. Just really, really bad. At least Feline has a 4 train, so he's not going to bankrupt on the 6 when it comes out. Could well bankrupt on the D, but I don't know who's in a position to bring the D out. So we may see a stall at the 6s. I think I'm in a very commanding position in this game. 3 presidencies, sole control of New York North. No train liability really at this point. Looks pretty good. The one thing I'd like is for the NYC potentially to run ahead of the B&M, just so it has an opportunity to run this 3 train before it rusts. However, if the B&M runs first, it could rust other people's 3 trains. In the PRR, for instance. So I don't think I want to sell down the B&M. I might want to sell down the NYC. Maybe someone will help me with that. Looks like the C&O's 3 train's going to rust pretty much regardless. The NYC is almost guaranteed to operate first. Be an act of God for the NYC to be sold down and the C&O to float up. Stranger things have happened, I suppose. King Zombie's got to be debating whether or not he dumps the CPR here. Problem is, if he sells out of the CPR, what is he going to buy? There's not too many safe investments. I have 3 presidencies, so any investment he makes in my companies is opening him up potentially to a dump. He'll just invest in his own company for now. I'll continue floating in the B&M. Feline's out of cash. Really, really should be selling out of the CPR here. This company's going to have to withhold. Has terrible revenue, terrible long-term potential, and it's a train liability. My one saving grace here is that the Erie hasn't left himself enough cash to upgrade Hamilton. In Toronto also doesn't have token money, so may also be withholding. I just want the NYC to get over there if possible. Will really improve his long-term potential. B&M, when I operate, is going to be, I believe, laying a gentle curve here to get down into New York. And I just need to make sure that the CPR doesn't get an upgrade here to run down into this track. So one of my companies is going to have to lay this straight upgrade here to block him indefinitely. Feline's passing, just sitting on this train liability of the CPR. Miriam has one more share they can buy. The one right thing that Feline did was buy my NYNH share so that it's floating up. When a company is being held in brown, it really behooves the other players to make sure it's floating up. It just greatly increases the number of withholds that players going to have to make to keep it brown. Miriam taking some time thinking about things. Not really sure what she's debating. I think she just needs to look for a good paying share here. Um, the NYC would be a pretty safe investment for her, I believe. Instead, going to buy her PRR. This is a company with no permanent trains, no cash. Going to be looking to withhold almost certainly. So not really the greatest investment, I don't think. PRR will have access to New York South through Philadelphia almost certainly. But then C&O and PRR will be fighting for that Philadelphia token. King Zombie also eager to invest in the PRR. And I will just continue my merry way floating the B&M. Miriam and King Zombie kind of out of cash. Probably should just be passing. I don't think there's much shenanigans for them available in the stock round. If I go last, Feline Wrangler will have priority, so at least he's safe from a dump on the CPR. once these D trains start becoming a relevant issue. Hopefully he's aware of that possibility because I'm not convinced I'm going to be ahead of the other players at the end of these operating rounds. I have 6 shares of the B&M that are going to be potentially falling back for one operating round. And then the 3 train in the NYC is going to be rusting as well, probably. All right, so I floated the B&M. Am I happy with the operating order here? I think so. I don't think I want to sell the B&M 1 share here. I'd like it to operate ahead of the PRR. So currently, Erie's going to operate, then the B&M, then the NYC, CPR, then the NYC. The only danger with this operating order is that the CPR could potentially um, get an upgrade that I don't want before I can lay track for it. I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about this. If I sell the B&M, I could buy an Erie. I could buy anything basically. 76 is the max stock price. Um, Erie's not going to be withholding, I don't think. That said, she does have train liability here. I'll just stay on the B&M. We're not going to think about this too much. Okay, we're into the next operating round. Erie's up. And as noted, Feline has priority, so hopefully we'll not be seeing him get dumped on by King Zombie to end the game. That would be a really bad way for me to lose. Erie has 2 runs for its trains. Not very good runs, but better than they were before. Unfortunately, has no market shares, and as a result is going to have to withhold if they want to lay any tokens anywhere. B&M's up, and going to upgrade Boston first. Really no other options for me. And buy a 6. So if I buy a 6 here, I will be emergency buying a train out of the NYC. So I might as well give all my money to the NYC pretty much. I want the tokens there. Can I give myself enough money for the NYC to token and lay the $120 track? I don't think it's going to be possible. So I need 630. That leaves me 130 left over. And I need like 40 bucks for the NYC. So I'll just emergency buy that train. And I'm actually going to have to sell a share to do it. That's painful. I don't think that's worth it. I think I'd rather withhold than sell a share. Okay. So let's give the NYC the money it needs and then buy the 6. So this will be 630. I need to leave this $1, so 129, I believe. And then I buy the 6. And the NYC has enough cash for the 6 train, but it can't lay the track still. That is painful. I really want the B&M to have that run so it can start paying out. I don't think there's a way for me to do it though. I will have to withhold on the NYH. I guess that's an option. Just unfortunate the way this operating order played out here. I guess maybe I should have sold the B&M down. Just going to be a little bit inefficient. It's not going to matter if nobody bankrupts, but if someone bankrupts, then this is going to cost me the game because I'm not going to get a payout on the NYC. But there's no way for me to get this track and the 6 train in the NYC without selling a share. So I said I should have sold that B&M share and just had the cash available. Now I get $5 left less. All right, well, what are you going to do? You win some, you lose some. CPR still has no valid upgrades here. That's good news for me. And with the NYNH, or the NYC, I'll be laying this track across the B&M, and then the NYC could lay this upgrade or could upgrade here for the B&M. Maybe I want to upgrade for the B&M so it can run down in here. I think that's what I'll do. So presumably all the other players are quaking in their boots right now, realizing that I'm going to get both 6 trains and they're going to be stuck running just 4 trains with terrible track as I slowly pull ahead until someone brings out the D. So he is putting himself even further away from the D train with this track, and I still have the ability to lay tragic track for him with the NY and H if I want to, or even potentially. Um, no, the NYC is going to fall back, so it won't be operating first. That's unfortunate. Okay, so let's go ahead and lay this $120 track here, and then I will be forced to sell a share, which is pretty painful. Sell one of the B&Ms and buy this 6 train. Okay, so I am further behind than I was, but I have everything I want for the rest of the game, basically. All my routes are secure. I can continue withholding with the NY and H to lay track and shuffle money into other companies if I want. And the B&M is going to upgrade this. NY and H will upgrade this to give myself runs. I should be able to pay out from here out, except for the NY and H. And looking at the other players' positions, 3 players have train liability, so none of them are particularly close to the D train. Actually, Feline could bring it out potentially before the other players, and they are both ahead of me in net worth. Neither one of them is going to go bankrupt. So I think if he were to withhold for the D train upgrade, I'll just be massively ahead of everyone. PRR withholding sees the danger, but unfortunately for them is a little bit too late in order to get ahead of the B&O in terms of the D train upgrade. So shuffling trains out of the Erie and running 2 trains with the PRR. We'll have really good revenue with the PRR with this. As noted, the B&O is not able to do anything useful and loses that on the Philadelphia and Trenton tile. Just really bad there. C&O hoping to link up with the CPR. And then the tokens in Pittsburgh will be very important. We'll see who gets that. But again, I'm going to try and do everything I can to prevent any linking up of these 2 companies. And I think that should be possible to do it. Is the C&O operating ahead of the B&O or the NYC now? It's not. So I will have 1 track to mess up with this plan of theirs. B&O really needs to keep withholding, or else is going to be in a world of hurt. B&O continuing to head to the Gulf. Really not going to be a good run for him with his eventual D train. And now that he's lost his second train, his revenue is so much lower that maybe it will be possible for the PRR to beat him for the D train upgrade. He's paying out now, which is kind of crazy. All those withholds, and now he's staring down the D train. He starts paying out. So I'm up on the NY&H. We said that we were going to be doing this upgrade here for the benefit of the B&M next operating round. And now I need to create a run for my NYC, or my NY&H. I'm going to have to hit some dits here, unfortunately. My runs are going to be really heavy on dits for all of my companies. I'm actually only able to run 4 stops here. That's a little bit annoying. So let's see. Does it make sense to withhold here? I'm going to have to do some withholds on the NY&H. I guess I might as well withhold before my revenue gets better. And I anticipate it getting better. So we'll just run that track and withhold this. We're back into the operating round at Miriam, and I'm not sure what Miriam's going to be going for moving forward. She needs to recognize that the C&O and CPR player is telegraphing that they're looking to double token Pittsburgh, which is going to really neuter the Erie. So she may have to withhold here. On the other hand, she may just press for bankruptcy against this 4 train player, in which case she needs to pay out to ensure that she's far enough ahead to win. I'm $300 to $400 behind the other 2 players. That's going to change now that I'm not having to buy trains anymore. But it's going to be pretty close in terms of bankruptcy. In theory, Feline should be able to survive a bankruptcy based on this liquidity in the company cash. But we'll see if that actually ends up working out. Since I'm going to have to withhold a couple of times on the N1H to keep it brown, may make sense for me to shuffle some trains around and get that money into other companies for tokens. The NYC in particular could really use another token just to cut up these runs that are developing. Don't have to do it this operating round, but may consider that in the future when I have invested in other paying shares. Erie not going to be withholding. And I imagine that King Zombie is going to try and race to link up with Pittsburgh here, but fortunately for me, I've got the NYC operating in between his two companies, so I should be able to find a way to block this, or at least slow it down. NYC doesn't have any other track it should be laying, I don't think. So how can we mess this up? If I lay a straight, there's plenty of upgrades that will get him there. If I lay this like so, there's basically no upgrades that will get him there. So that's probably the move. Yeah, I don't think there's any upgrades in the game that will get him past this. I was wrong over here with the upgrade though, so I could be wrong again. All right, we'll get some real money going with the NYC now. Running to Erie, that's only 6 stops, so I still have to hit 2 dits. I'm gonna have to rework these runs a little bit to have more worthwhile revenue, but I'll pay that out. So now he needs this upgrade here to get this type of track, but I should be able to lay that track here. There's only 2 of them in the game, right? Yes. So I think his chances of linking up there are pretty poor. So he will instead be upgrading Lancaster just to increase his revenue a little bit. Probably the right decision. And with these market shares, he's going to be pretty close to having token money in this company. He now has it. That's good news for him. We'll see what the B&O player feels like doing. He has finally linked up with the Gulf, but it's really not worth doing it. It's going to improve his run a little bit. Hopefully he starts withholding for this D train. I'd love to see him rust the other players' D trains, or 4 trains. While he thinks about this, let's just look at the spreadsheet and see how things are looking. So I lost cash last operating round because I emergency bought that train, obviously. Fell pretty far behind, net $300, net $400 behind the other players. But I think that we will be in better shape moving forward than that. Should be. I'll continue withholding on the NYNH, I think. May want to withhold on the NYNH and take the train out of the NYC just to discourage people investing in it into the next stock round. And then I will be able to just buy paying shares in their companies. Looks like the B&O did withhold again, seeing that he is a little bit over 1 withhold away from the D train upgrade. But if he upgrades Baltimore, he's going to run for $10 more, which should put him over the threshold. So he should be bringing out the D train, which is great news. That's really going to hurt Miriam and King Zombie. Cut them down to size, bring them back into my net worth range, and then I should be able to just eke out a victory here. I don't think these D trains are going to be anything to really worry about. D train of the PRR, potentially interesting. But the D train of the CPR, going to be really bad. And the D train of the B&O, not going to be too good either. So I'll just pick up some shares in those companies in the next stock round, and I think I'll be able to win this. I have a huge share advantage, potentially, with these 7 brown shares. I think that'll be enough to take me the rest of the way in this game. PRR, as noted, running 2 4 trains, going to have a really monstrous run here, but it's going to be a little bit too late, I think, for the upgrade. If they withhold, they will be running ahead of the B&O, actually. So actually, I think the PRR may end up with the D train upgrade, which is very good news for Miriam. Very bad news for me. Yeah, if she withholds twice, she'll get it and save herself $300, which is pretty unfortunate. So she's seeing that potential and withheld. Beano laying into New York South. Unfortunately, going to have to hit a bunch of dits again. And the revenue is 200, which I will pay. And then the NYNH is up. NYNH, do I want to prevent this? I think I do, right? Alternatively, I could get the NYC over there and start laying tokens with abandon to screw these D-train runs. So maybe I don't do that just yet. What else would I lay here? I'm not going to be able to upgrade Rochester beyond there. I'm just thinking if I were to allow this track to upgrade by upgrading this, then that upgrade's not available here. So I actually think I've killed this for any potential link up, which is fine. I mean, that's kind of what I intended to do. I'm just rethinking it for a second. I don't know that the NYNH has a whole lot of track it needs to lay. Maybe I'll just lay this to end the ambitions of the CPR for good there. Okay. So do I have a better run at least? I don't. I could also upgrade Boston for an extra $10. Um, I don't think that's worthwhile. I can do that next operating round. Although, really, what's the downside of doing it now? It would be a few extra bucks. May want to leave Boston the opportunity to run up, but really, not really. I don't want to give the CPR easy access there. Okay, so we'll do this and withhold again, leaving myself a bunch of money in this company. I may actually be able to run a D-train myself with all these withholds. We have one more operating round. And does it make sense to buy the track for the NYC? Buy the train with the NYC? I don't think so. I want the cash. I don't want anybody to be able to buy a ton more shares than me in the next operating round. So CPR really doesn't have any valid upgrades that will get him anywhere interesting. Could look to upgrade a straight across here and then upgrade this with a gentle curve to get into Hamilton, Toronto, but that should be pretty easy to prevent. So I think his track options are very limited. And then looking at the revenue for the last operating round, I am $200 or $50 behind King Zombie, $50 ahead of Miriam as a result of her withholds, but let's not forget that I was also withholding. So I think this is misleading. I'm probably actually running for the most when I start paying out. I'm only $300 behind, and at this point I think we've had enough withholds that we won't be seeing a bankruptcy, so this game should go long and I should win it. CPR laying the upgrade to open up the straight track here, but unfortunately he needs this brown track over here, so even opening up the green track is not going to be enough for him. He could eventually lay Scranton and hope to get in through there, but that's yet another $120 track for him. That's going to be pretty painful. Erie has no cash, so not going to be laying Hamilton, Toronto. It may be a mistake in retrospect that I left this Pittsburgh so well defended because Miriam's going to be able to run through Pittsburgh with two companies, and preventing the CPR from getting that token is going to prevent the CNO from tokening that D train out. I guess I had to give that to someone, either King Zombie or Miriam. So it's kind of unavoidable. Someone's going to benefit from that situation. With the NYC, I think at this point I want to start heading over to Hamilton, Toronto, but with this upgrade over here, in theory, King Zombie could start doing something like this and then upgrade this. But it's going to take two upgrades. He's the only one that can do that, so it's safe for me to do this for now. Okay. And I have a 6 run. Looks like I can hit Boston instead of that now. Is this really my best run? I think it might be. Okay, so we'll pay that out. I may need to look at upgrading this with a gentle curve here so that I can run from Boston down into New York South and then up into Albany. Actually, I guess that doesn't really make sense. Yeah, I'll have to think about this track. So King Zombie is laying this track that I was defending, but he has no brown upgrade. That's going to get him anywhere. So I think he's realizing that he's in trouble. Is that correct? That there's just no useful upgrade? I think it's correct. I don't think this track would help him. And as mentioned, at this point, I may not really want him to um, not be able to link up with Pittsburgh. I may prefer him actually to make that link to cut the D train of the PRR. He has upgraded Hamilton to Toronto. This actually is giving this track to the PRR player, though. B&M can't take advantage of it. All right, so I was thinking about laying this here. Does that actually help me, though? These runs are pretty pathetic. I need to find a way to improve my runs. This certainly wouldn't help. And this is unhelpful as well. So let's lay this and see what happens. I just need to be very careful that CPR doesn't find a way to get in here. I should be able to kill that with the NYNH though, before he has a chance to. Okay, so we'll do that. And unfortunately still just running for 210. Pay that out. So I do have token money at least now in this company, but no real way to use it anywhere. PRR going to be withholding for the D-Train upgrade, courtesy of the B&O players' misplays. And actually has money to token in Hamilton and Toronto as well. I think even dropping a token, they have more than enough money for the upgrade, so probably want to do that before the C&O does. C&O has some market shares and will have token money in the next operating round. So this is a potentially important token. I guess actually Dunkirk is probably the more important token from that perspective. That does leave the NYC the option of potentially tokening in the future on Hamilton and Toronto, depending on how this is upgraded. Are there any upgrade opportunities that don't give a run for the NYC? There are, so this one in particular would be problematic for the NYC, which is exactly what he lays. Yep. All right. Well played there. PRR is withheld, now in yellow, and buys the D. So Miriam's still very much in this game. Has a yellow company and a D train, which has a really good run. This shouldn't have been allowed to happen, but I guess I have to blame myself somewhat. I could have allowed King Zombie to cut this run potentially. B&O player falling back, of course, but has plenty of cash, will not be going bankrupt. Let's see what he sells here. So Miriam is going to have a bunch of yellow shares and a bunch of D-Train shares. Very much a contender still. I think I can take this long term. I just need to get some tokens out. Not going to be impossible for me to do it. I mean, worst case scenario, with all the cash I have in the NYNH, I can upgrade this, get into this $120 track, and lay a token with the NYC over here. So Feline has sold my brown NYNH shares of all things. All right. And now he afforded a D train. He's eliminated from the game, but we saw that coming. NYNH getting a gift. NYNH has fallen back and is now all the way back at the floor of the market, so that's good. Who's going to be picking up these shares? He has priority, so he can pick them back up. It's weird that he even sold them. I don't really get that. He didn't need the cash, obviously. So maybe I need to think about getting down into Reading and Allentown from this area. Don't have a valid upgrade for that just yet. Could do that and then upgrade that, but let's throw that away over here. I'm getting nervous by this CPR player lurking. So we'll do that. And then with my 5 train, I think this is still my best run. And we'll pay this out, I think. Doesn't make sense to withhold when you're already ledged. Pay this out. And then do I buy the NYC train here? That would discourage people investing in my company, and it would give me the ability to start throwing away these tokens. I think I might want to do that. NYC with a track into New York would really be painful for the PRR who doesn't have cash, does have cash for the token. But it's just really good run to run both New Yorks. NYNH is going to be withholding more, so could also get a D train for one of my companies. With all these dits, it would be nice to have a D train. Question is, does it make sense to buy the train now? What companies are people going to be investing in? Would be nice to deny them some opportunities for investment. I think I do this later in the game. Potentially pick up a D train. Although, if I'm not able to deny these runs for the PRR, I might slowly fall behind. Hard to say. So if I give the NYC the money, what track am I going to be laying? I might have to lay Scranton, upgrade Scranton, then lay this $120 track. Because I don't think this track exists. It's already laid over here. All right. Market has $9,000 in it. I am barely behind, $200 behind. King Zombie is going to have to buy this D train. I think it's okay for me to buy the train out of the NYC. 408. Buy that. Okay. I could even emergency buy a D train into the NYC and run 2 trains with the NYNH. I think that's a huge mistake, though. I don't have the track to run 2 trains with the NYNH very effectively. So I think my goal here is to lay Scranton with the NYC, upgrade it, and then lay this $120 track for the token here. That's going to be the goal. That helps the CPR a little bit. That is a downside that I didn't think about. But that's okay. CPR player is going to be in rough shape. So feeling has passed and given my major competitor Miriam my brown shares. I swear this is so annoying. I need to start screening players better for these games. And this player is single-handedly giving the game to my opponents. King Zombie buying the PRR. I think it makes sense to pick that up. I will also buy PRR. It's going to have really good runs, and I also want that company floating up, so it's hard to keep in the yellow. Miriam and I are tied in terms of shares, and she has a better route than me. She's already a little bit ahead of me, too. This is painful. I shouldn't be losing this game. The other players' options are a little bit limited in terms of their investments, I will say. It's just not safe for them to invest in my company, so I can dump in the last operating round of the game. Everybody's looking towards my B&M. That's interesting. I don't know that I care that much about the B&M. I think I'd rather have a C&O. Chance that a C&O could be running a D train, depending on what he does. I suppose I'll just max out on my B&M. I have plenty of cash for shares. I really hope that Feline Wrangler doesn't keep withholding into yellow and just let these players sit on these yellow shares. I'd really need him to pay out so that they can't take advantage of that share density. Looks like everybody's still laser focused on the B&M. Fair enough. I am maxed out there, and I do like the idea of the share value of the Erie. I don't think I'm going to hit my limit, so I'll buy this and then I'll look towards the CNO later. 5 more shares I need to hit my limit. There's not enough shares in the game. Unless someone were to take this CPR shares, which would be pretty bad. There is some value in buying the IPO shares of the CPR. I guess I could look to do that, but that seems like a later game priority. So if I buy this IPO share, Erie's floating up and King Zombie is at risk of a dump. I think that's fine. King Zombie probably not going to end up with priority here. Probably be either me or Miriam, since he's operating in between the two of us. Miriam looking for that added value of the CPR. I think I'm going to detour for a CNO share before I pick that up, though. There's only one left, however. Miriam would be safe to buy that. So if I buy this, then I am guaranteed to get a CNO share since King Zombie can't buy one. Okay. Oops, I do this every time, buying the market instead of the IPO. Miriam, potentially last share for her. CNO. I guess she could buy 2, actually. Buying my NYC. Okay, I mean, it's safe. I'm not going to dump it. Be funny if they float it up, actually. Then when it falls back, it actually doesn't hurt me. King Zombie probably debating whether or not he wants the share. And he's selling out of the CPR. Okay. Doesn't really affect anybody. He was already ledged, but he has filled up the market at least. I will buy his CNO. Miriam, 1 more share for her. Could buy the NYC. We'll see if she wants to. A little bit of an interesting dilemma here. If I buy the CNO share, technically I'll be open to a dump from King Zombie. And Miriam is safe to sit on the 2 shares because there's a share in the market. Should I really be worried about him dumping the CNO on me? I don't think so. He's not going to have any shares he can buy if he dumps this, so I'll buy it. Means I go last in priority. Technically could be dumped on. I think that's my only train liability, though. Yes, me and King Zombie both have Erie shares, and he's ahead of me in priority, so not dumpable. Miriam and I are tied on shares. She's a few bucks ahead of me, but that PRR run is going to be so good. I'm in potential trouble because of that. She also has a bunch of my brown NYNH shares, which was entirely preventable. So Erie just throwing away some brown track. It's funny, at the end of the day with the NYC, it may make sense with all this cash to start operating north to get into Hamilton and Toronto. I'm not going to do it, but could see something like that in the future. Instead, I'll be heading down into New York south. King Zombie, let's see. He cannot bankrupt himself. Okay. Always got to be worried about that on these 18xx games. People just bankrupting themselves out of spite. How many shares does he have to sell? He's going to have to sell a bunch of shares. That will open up shares for Miriam and I to buy in the next stock round. CPR realizing he's going to have a D run of himself, of his own, and as a result is going to give himself a run and then sell shares for the D train. In theory, I should be able to take advantage of some of this track he's laying. I'd have to lay a $120 track to get over there. I don't know if that's going to be worthwhile. So he's shuffling trains, and we'll have a D train in the CNO. Miriam and I am splitting this company in terms of minor investors. CNO has almost as good a run as the PRR. PRR has access up here, but I don't think he's running that track just yet. Although, actually, he may be because the CNO has blocked him at Cleveland. or is blocking him at Cleveland by default. Looks like the CNO is hoping to get down into the Gulf. That's strange. Maybe he'll run through Washington into Baltimore, actually. Selling the Erie, love anything that hurts Miriam. And selling the NYC, love that a little bit less. Buys the D train, so nobody has train liability anymore. And the B&M, I don't know that he has a whole lot of track he wants to lay at this point. So we'll skip track, and we will just run our train. Doesn't look like I have a better route than I have in the past. All these dits, unfortunately. The NYC now has some options. So this doesn't make any sense. Not going to be getting into Pittsburgh. I think I have to lay Scranton, then upgrade that with the NYNH, and then my next operation I'll be able to lay the track down to New York South with the NYC. So just looking at the tiles, there will be a sharp turn tile, I hope. Would be, in theory, possible for other players to throw away some sharp turns, but I don't think they'll be able to throw away both of them. So we will not lay a token just yet, and I will buy a train out of the NYNH. I think the NYC will run the 6 train better than the NYNH will, so I'll buy that. And we're done. So B&O's first operation with this D train, but it's been tokened out of anywhere worth going, so it's going to be pretty poor. Maybe now hoping to eventually get into Chicago, and I'm sure the CNO player will try and block that just so that the PRR can't also run into Chicago. I'm not sure what the B&O player is doing here. So just giving, I guess, the CNO a run into the Gulf for no reason. Seeing an investor in the CNO? Nope. All right. If I can complete this loop for the NYC, my revenue is going to be a whole lot better on the NYC and potentially on the NYNH as well, because I'll be able to hit New York South as well. So it's pretty important for me to be able to do this. PRR can block me from running through Philadelphia and secure their access to New York, but they're not going to be able to block me from getting into New York per se. We'll see where they want to drop this token if they're cognizant of this risk. This is their only opportunity to block me at Philadelphia. So they did token, but they tokened in Hamilton and actually they're rethinking that. I'm going to hold on to the token for now. And we'll just see what she does. So it runs for 340 and neglects to token anywhere. Not necessary for her to token up here, obviously, but missing out on this token here is going to hurt her. So now I'll reveal my evil strategy, and we'll just start paying out here. I'm going to have to do some withholding on the NYNH still, but don't have to do it just yet. I should probably have withheld there, actually, because I'm going to have better revenue in the next operating rounds. So I should have withheld there, and then I'll be able to run into New York. That's a mistake. Oh well. There's over $10,000 in the market, so this game's going to go pretty long. We'll see if anybody's able to overcome Miriam or not. I really hope I'm able to come up with the difference. CPR running a 5 train. Should probably be starting to head down into Ottawa. Doesn't have the money for the upgrade here. It's actually a little bit close. Miriam laid one of the sharp turns. There's only 2 left. If someone else were to lay that, I would be in trouble. I don't think anybody else has the opportunity to do it, though. B&M has nothing left to do, so we'll just run the same track, pay that out. CNO running his first D train. As long as he's not able to lay a sharp turn, which he's not. Interesting. So with this upgrade, we'll be able to complete this loop potentially, but maybe not accounting for my token on the Philadelphia track. It's going to make it hard for the CNO to take advantage of that. CNO does have a token, but doesn't have cash to use it. All right, here we go. My crowning achievement. Let's see if it pays out for me. Token here. And now I'm running a 6 train for a little bit more money than I was before. So that's 6 stops. I need to not hit Lancaster, and then I can double tap New York. 290. Let's see if that's going to be enough to put me ahead here. D train running now. No tokens. How many tokens are left in this game? Erie has tokens, can drop a token. PRR has token money. And as a result of this track laid so helpfully by the CNO, they're going to be able to token me out at Scranton. Great. I can't catch a break there. Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's no valid upgrades here. I don't think that will get anybody over to Pittsburgh to return the favor. NYC does have another token, I believe, so I could drop a token in Scranton to preserve that run. And someone helpfully gave me a market share. Thank you for that, King Zombie. So I will have token money. Won't have it before the PRR and the Erie are able to double token in Scranton, though. Bad news. One saving grace for me here is that Miriam is massively over her share limit as a result of the B&O paying out and the PRR paying out. So that will potentially give me this game in the long term. It's much closer than I had hoped. So track talk back for a moment. We, as a group of players, discussed the game state and ultimately decided to just call the game rather than play it out async. I think that I was going to win this game. Miriam had no real easy way of staying yellow with a lot of her shares. Feeling was going to pay out, and then she would have to continue withholding with her PRR to keep it yellow, which would allow me to pull ahead with my companies. Even if I were to exit brown with the NYNH, I would still be in yellow for another set of ORs, and I think my share lead would put me ahead. So we ultimately decided to call the game. I didn't think there was much game left to play. The one thing I'll point out is that Miriam had the option of double tokening Scranton and could have blocked this bypass that I have created here. So there's no guarantee that my runs would have been as high as they were in the last operating round. It may have ended up being close, but I think that I would have ultimately won this game, especially because as the game went on, I could have withheld with the NYNH and potentially brought out a D train into that company as well, which would have increased my revenues. So the game was called. It was a very sloppy game, just like last night. I got some gifts. Miriam got a lot of gifts. And King Zombie just got fewer gifts than the other two of us, so wasn't able to keep up. I think the decision by King Zombie to take over the CPR was a mistake. But I don't know that's necessarily what cost him the game. I think my big mistake in this game was not realizing that Miriam could block me at Lancaster. That ended up being more consequential than I think I had realized. And then ultimately, my track just really wasn't very good. My revenue was pretty low. I think my other decision to block the link up from the CPR and the CNO along this central corridor here also was potentially costly because it eliminated King Zombie's ability to fight Miriam for track and gave her a very strong D run, which kept her in contention for the game. All that said, I think at the end of the day, this game was unfortunately decided by the decisions made by the B&O player. Decisions to sell shares that, one of the contending players is able to immediately snap up. Decisions not to take an important track like Philadelphia when they're given the opportunity to, or token in Lancaster. All those decisions just have really huge impact on the game state, and it just makes it hard to say really who played better when you have such big decisions being made kind of randomly. So that's all a long way of saying that well played to Miriam. I think she was a contender throughout the game, and it was a relatively close game as a result. We will be back with additional commentary in the future, potentially additional live play, and hope that you'll be sticking around to watch. Thanks for listening.